This is a quick video that gives you a rundown on accessing the Report and Graph Manager and a little bit about the iconography that's used with it, just to kind of navigate some. Now, this is something that allows you to access some additional information on top of just access times and other things, and it's going to prove to be very useful, but in very specific circumstances. So I've got one of my scenarios that I've been doing for just showing the basics, ISAT basics. We've got the scenario, we've got a target area, the state of Oklahoma, we've got a ground station within, and we've got one satellite with a variety of sensors and receivers, that sort of thing. The easiest way to access your report and graph manager is to come up to Analysis. There's File, Edit, View, Insert, Analysis, and we go down to Report and Graph Manager. So when you click on that, one thing I'll point out is it says Object Type Scenario. Well, I've only got the one scenario here, and that's ISAT Basics. And it's bringing that up by default because in my object browser, that's what I was clicked on. And as a result, I have a variety of different reports and graphs that I can do for the entire scenario. I'll go ahead and point this out. We've got most of them look like a little notebook with maybe a little lock next to it, but that is the icon for a report, so that'll give you a list of numbers and a lot of data on it. Some of them, however, have an icon that looks like this, where it looks like, if you look close, it looks like a little bar graph. Well, that one's an actual graph. In fact, let's bring that up. So here's a graph, so I'm going to do generate, and we can see a graph of Greenwich hour angle, apparently. I'm not familiar with that one. Or I can select report and click generate, and I get a text file listing out the information associated with it. Okay, but this isn't a complete list of all of our reports and graphs that are pre-programmed into STK. For that, we might want to switch to, say, a satellite. Well, let me amend that statement. That still won't give us the complete list, because just like we saw with the parent and child objects, the subsystems, what you're selected on will affect what types of things are available. Now, the satellites are going to be ones that have quite a few pre-made reports ready to go. Things like a listing of apogee, ascending node. We've got a useful one might be something like eclipse times. So, in fact, let's take a look at this. Eclipse time, let's take a look at the graph. Here it is represented as a graph starting from the beginning of our scenario, going up until Wednesday the 5th, Thursday the 6th, and so forth. And we can see we are not in eclipse, and then bam, we're in eclipse from that time period. So we can see when the eclipses happen. The graphs are less useful for being able to pull direct numbers from them and work with them, in my experience, but they are wonderful for being able to see patterns. So graphs can be very, very useful to see patterns. We can take a look at the exact same data, eclipse times. One's a graph and one's a report. So here is all the information that goes into making that report. The start time and stop time, duration, what object is obstructing, and so forth. So there's a bunch of information that you can get from these reports. And it's often, I find, the reports that are usually more useful in an in-depth analysis. Now, that's for satellites. If we had more than one satellite, then we'd have some options here in this table that we could choose the report for ISAT or whatever the other satellite would be, maybe an OSAT or an ASAT or whatever. We could get the receiver, for instance. Now, the receiver for our facility is going to have much more limited reports, at least that are pre-programmed along with it, or graphs. We could also take a look at the ground facility, ground site, and that has quite a few different reports and graphs. I just wanted to give you an overview of working with that and give you an idea of some of the things that you might be able to see. Eclipse times might be a good one, lighting times, all sorts of useful things that we might see when applying our ideas. But this is a rundown of the Report and Graph Manager. For a detailed list, take a look at AGI, and we'll also have a support page that shows some of the more common reports and graphs that are needed for some of our scenarios.